Welcome once again to the Delaware Valley Workshop. I don't know how it is at your house, but at mine, my wife likes to garden. Our first garden was at ground level, and she hated it. Basically, she told me, I don't like to get down on my knees to garden. To solve this problem, I have agreed to build her 3 raised garden beds. I bought 4 12-foot long pressure-treated posts to make the corners of the raised garden beds. Here, I'm rough sizing the posts at about 42 inches long so I can get 3 posts from each 12-foot section. I will end up cutting the pieces to their final size of 40 inches in the workshop. I begin by making a line 40 inches from each end of the post, then extend that line with my square all around the post. I use my circular saw to make the rough cuts on all 4 sides of the post until I have all 3 corner posts cut out. I start at one end and make the cuts, then I readjust my sawhorses and my post, and I make the second set of cuts, so I end up with 3 roughly cut pieces of pressure treated pine for my posts. I am now taking all the posts I rough cut with the circular saw, and I will cut them to their final length. I square one end at the miter saw. Then I slide it down to the miter stop, which is set at 40 inches. Then I cut that end of the post. Using the miter stop will ensure all my posts will be the same 40-inch length. I do this to all the posts I need to complete the 3 beds. After the posts are cut, I mark the adjacent faces that will become the outside faces of the garden bed. These faces get the cutout for the connecting boards to make all 4 sides of the bed. Using my 1, 2, 3 block, I mark a line 3 inches from what will become the top of the posts. I then extend that line to the adjacent face of that post. Then I measure down from the line 17 3/4 inches and make another mark, which is the length of the cutout. I extend that line to the adjacent face as well. I then scribble on the material I want to remove so I don't cut on the wrong sides of the boards.
Okay, now I'm going to hog out the half laps for the boards that go lengthwise. So boards are 1.5 thick, so I'm going to have to do it in 2 passes because 1.5 is just way too much for the dado blade to take. So I've lowered it to half. I've marked out my spots. This is 3 inches to this line. This is 19 3/4 to this line. So I'm going to take my fence and set it to 3 inches. Like that. Position my workpiece. And then, because it's unsafe to run a dado through with a sliding miter gauge and a fence, I am now going to undo the fence, move it out of the way. Now that I got it in position, I'm going to make sure it doesn't move. I'm going to power on the saw, make a couple cuts, stop, reset for the second line here, make a couple cuts, and then hog out the material in between.
I begin on one side and make a couple of cuts, then I stop, turn the saw off, readjust, and then make the cuts on the other side, and then remove all the material in between the 2 lines. I now flip the board over and repeat the exact same procedure on the adjacent face. I'm going to do this several times on each post until I have a complete set of 4 posts to connect to. Here I've raised the dado blade to the final depth of my cut, bring back my boards, and continue on Doing the same procedure, starting at one side, then starting at the other, and then connecting the two ends until they meet. And I do this on all the adjacent sides that I marked previously until all the posts are done.
And there we have it. Hogged out perfectly to hold the lengthwise boards.
Once again, we're back at the miter saw. I'm going to cut the 2x6 boards that determine the width of the garden beds. Once again, I start by squaring one end of the board and then sliding it down to my stop block and then making the final length cut. Two of the garden beds will be 2 feet wide and the third one will be 3 feet wide. There are 3 2x6 boards for each side. The length of all the garden beds will be 6 feet. I will cut all 36 boards to the respective length at the miter saw. Finally, we can make a few sub-assemblies. I'll start with the end of the garden beds. These ends are the 3-foot and 2-foot widths of the beds. I will be using Type Bond 3 waterproof glue and applying it to all the sides of my post cutouts. Now I can attach the end boards to the posts. I'll start by taking one board and starting at the bottom of my cutout, align one end with the left post. Then I'll align the other end of the board with the right post. Once the board is in the right position, I will pre-drill for 2¼ inch outdoor deck screws and attach the boards to the posts. I will repeat the same assembly process at the top of the cutout. The third board I will place and attach roughly in the middle, leaving a big enough gap to accommodate enough space for seasonal expansion and contraction of the boards. All 6 end assemblies will be built with the same process. I have come back outside, near the final spot for the raised garden beds. For some unknown reason, I picked the windiest day to try to balance the end pieces so I could attach the long connecting boards. This assembly attempt generated more outtakes than you can possibly imagine. Note to self, rocks do not make the greatest of helpers, and they are certainly not getting any credit for helping the assembly along. Next time, don't be a moron and ask your kids to help hold the assemblies for you. After several attempts of trying to get the first long pieces attached, I finally was successful and was able to glue and attach the piece much like I did the end assemblies in the shop. Using the same process before, I then attached the top and the middle boards using glue and deck screws. I don't know about you guys, but here's another idiotic thing I do. I never keep everything together where I need it. You'll notice that I have the boards all over the place, the clamps in another place, my drill that I'm using to pre-drill one place another, and then of course the screwdriver that I'm using, the impact driver, is way across the yard where I can't possibly reach it. So I'm trying my best to learn to keep all my tools together, but it's been a battle of futility. Once I got the three sides connected, the beds could stand on their own without using rocks, thankfully. I completed the assembly starting at the bottom, then the top, and finally placing the middle board and attaching with deck screws and glue. And here they are completed. I filled them up with 3 cubic feet of topsoil and vegetable mix, and my wife began planting minutes after I was done. Her only comment was thanks for saving my knees and back. So until next time, I'm Joe from the Delaware Valley Workshop.